Well, hello, and welcome to Wellness on Wednesday. This is an informational and fun series dedicated to promoting walking as a powerful tool for improving health and reducing arthritis and joint pain. We're delighted to bring you this free virtual health talk series through the esteemed Rochester Clinic here in Rochester, Minnesota, and the Lotus Health Foundation, also located here in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm Denise Stegall. I am the curator at livinghealthylist.com, and I will be your host for Wellness on Wednesday that runs each week through the end of June. So I mentioned Rochester Clinic and Lotus Health Foundation. Truly, with their strong focus on community well-being, they're at the forefront of spearheading this series of talks that delves into topics like whole food, plant-based nutrition, physical activities, obviously for the improvement of arthritis health, which is what we're talking about. This is all thanks to Let's Walk Minnesota, which is a campaign sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Health and is funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And it's because of them that we have this opportunity to bring this initiative to you. So throughout this series of talks, our presenters will guide you in discovering the incredible potential of walking and provide insights on how to enhance your quality of life through movement, nutrition, and lifestyle medicine. We got a little bit of an introduction to that last week. So today, Dr. Monica Aggarwal, who is a clinical professor of medicine in the Division of Cardiovascular Medicine at the University of Florida, she's our presenter today. And she's going to be talking about the role of inflammation in chronic illness and tell us about the body's remarkable tools to combat it. She brings a personal touch to this topic as she herself manages the complexities of rheumatoid arthritis. So everyone, get ready to embark on a journey of knowledge and empowerment as Dr. Aggarwal sheds light on this subject for us. So let's dive in and meet Dr. Monica Aggarwal. Hi, doctor. How are you?
So good to see you guys. I'm sorry about the weird location.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. I totally understand, when you're out and about, when you're busy, there's always so much going on. So we appreciate that you have the time to be with us today. Let's see. We can start by just, telling us a little bit about you. I kind of gave you a brief bio there, but yes. Tell us about who you are, actually where you are.
So thank you so much for having me, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I am a preventive cardiologist. I'm actually was on vacation with my family and we had a little miss up with the times, and that's why I ended up in an airport rather than at a home. And I am a cardiologist, so I focus on management of heart disease and using nutrition and lifestyle. And that started with my own journey, and I'd be happy to share that with you. So that's actually how we're going to start this talk. So the objectives of this talk are we're going to focus on the role of inflammation in chronic illness, which I think people don't sort of understand how severe and how important that word inflammation is. We're going to learn about the role of the microbiome, which is the gut and the gut bugs and the gut health. And we're going to discuss the impact of movement, nutrition, and other lifestyle changes and how they impact your healing. So why am I here? So, we've already sort of briefly said I am a preventive cardiologist. I'm 15 years out. So I've been doing this now for 15 years. I'm beyond the point where I have given out, admittedly, thousands and thousands of prescriptions for Lipitor or cholesterol medications. And then with that, you sort of start wondering, what the heck are you doing? Because you feel like you're just giving out a whole lot of medicines. And every time you see somebody, you are just adding another medicine. So through my own journey in nutrition and lifestyle, I was able to really understand how to change my own lifestyle to heal my own body. And it really changed my entire practice of medicine. So not only am I a preventive cardiologist, I'm a researcher. So I do research in the nutrition space. And I do believe that having credibility in the nutrition space is extremely important because there are loads of people out there advocating this and that. And there's no data. And it kills me that people are following these things, and it hurts me. So I decided to throw myself out there as somebody who can be trusted, I hope. I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids that are bumbling around this airport somewhere and never in a good space, always running around. I'm an athlete, so I'm a runner. I'm a triathlete. I've done marathons. This is the joy. I love to run and be active, but I'm also a patient. So about 14 years ago, has it been 14? No, 12 years ago now, I was after I had my 3rd child, I was diagnosed with an advanced form of rheumatoid arthritis. It started out as, 4 months postpartum. I was sleeping about 4 hours a night. I was working 8 hours, starting 8 weeks postpartum. I wasn't sleeping much. I wasn't eating well. I was already vegetarian, but I was eating sort of a lot of junk food. I was still trying to run. So working, pumping, nursing, trying to mash baby food at night, sweet potatoes at night, while I then would go to bed at 12 o'clock. I would make cupcakes at midnight for my baby's birthdays. And then I'd show up and be gone at the hospital by 5 a.m. So I lived this crazy life. And in that setting, I started developing joint pain. My joint pain was migratory. It started out with a shoulder. It actually started out with a finger. As you can see, that was my most impressive joint. I still sometimes find myself massaging my fingers. And I know a lot of people who have arthritis feel that. Then it went to a shoulder. Then it went to the knees. There got to be a point where I just felt glass in my feet. When people describe that feeling, when you go through it and really understand, and some of you in the audience may know that feeling, but I used to feel like glass was cutting me in my feet every time I made a step. So I changed my shoes 3 times because nothing could be wrong with me, right? It must have been my shoes. So I went from being a very active person to being unable to climb the stairs. I remember one day in particular that I had to crawl up the stairs, and it's when I really knew that I had a problem. So very quickly, Mary Schmidt is requesting remote control of my screen. I don't know what you want to do there. Because it's unable, I can't move it now because, should I decline that? Okay. So, so when I got to the point where I was unable to, Mary, I think you're pressing a button that keeps having you request the screen. And then when you do it, I can't move my screen. So I was diagnosed with advanced form of rheumatoid arthritis. I didn't go to the doctor at first because I know I'm a doctor. I can handle anything, right? So not. And I started myself on antibiotics for Lyme disease because I had migratory joint pain. I figured it must be Lyme disease. And it just continued to escalate and escalate. So I ultimately got some blood work done with a friend, and my numbers were through the roof. I had very, very high inflammatory markers. I had a very high rheumatoid factor and a very high anti-CCP antibody, which are all markers of rheumatoid arthritis. The higher anti-CCP antibodies are considered to be prognostically more poor, that you're going to have a worse outcome, and are indicative, or at least that was the thought 10 years ago. And I was told that I needed to get on medications within 1 week of my diagnosis. So I was nursing a baby. I had a baby under 4. I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And I was told I needed to stop nursing within a week, which maybe had been the hardest thing I've ever done. And I needed to get on medications. So I was put on prednisone. I was put on methotrexate. And that was maybe the darkest time of my life, because you feel humbled by your life and by illness. And pain is a funny thing, right? We tell people as doctors, just take pain medicine, it'll be okay. But when you actually are feeling that pain, there's nothing like it. So I got started on methotrexate, and I felt better. I had a load of side effects, but I got better. So I had a lot of side effects from the methotrexate, but I stayed on them because I felt that this is what was the cost of feeling better. I was scared all the time. I was emotional, fragile, unable to understand how it happened to me. I didn't feel in control, and I was angry at my kid. So, but I got better. And about 3 months or 4 months after that, I was doing a standard health screen I usually do for my cardiac patients. And a woman came to me, and her name is Karen Fick. She came to me, and she's a nutrition consultant. And she said, you know, I really want to be part of your prevention screenings for heart patients. And I said, oh, no, we're good. I know what I'm doing. And that was the true irony, right? As doctors, sometimes we are not nice. It's not that we're trying to be mean, but we are proud and we think we know a lot because we went to medical school and did all this training. But she said, well, humor me and let me do your health screening and nutrition screening. And it was with Karen, that I finally started understanding the role of what you do in your life, your nutrition, your lifestyle. And it's not just nutrition, it's movement, it's stress reduction, it's sleep. And we'll go through that. But it was that the concepts that actually you can do things to change your life was really a novel concept, because in my mind, you eat better and exercise to improve your heart, but that there's so many other illnesses that you can actually use lifestyle changes to impact your body was sort of mind blowing. And a lot of that was through understanding and learning about the gut. So I decided to take a leap of faith. I was already vegetarian. So I worked on an elimination diet. I changed everything about how I ate. I added back a lot of healthier, nutritious foods we'll go through. I focused on my sleep and yoga and definitely on movement. So how did I feel? Within 6 weeks of changing my lifestyle, I noticed I was different. Within months, I felt like the old me. Within a year of my diagnosis or being on medications, I had weaned off all of my medications. So this is me doing triathlons and doing loads of yoga. There's my triathlon. I did my first triathlon. And then I am now 11 years after diagnosis, 10 years with lifestyle changes, and I'm certainly not looking back. So why do I tell you this story? Well, I tell you this story because, you know, there's no surprise, or people have heard of the doctor-patient story, and that is always a moving story. But why do I tell it to you? Well, because I need you to understand and see that there are things that you can do in your daily life that impact your body, how you're going to feel, how you're going to move. You can change. Diet can change your body. Movement can change your body. Sleep can change your body. And so these are important things to sort of learn and understand and take on. And when you feel bad and your joints are hurting, you don't want to try a whole lot of stuff, and it can add to your mood and you can get down and depressed. And I get that. Boy, I've had all sorts of emotions. But when you start making small changes, you can make a huge amount of impact. So I moved out of private practice and I moved into academics because I wanted to show people, because doctors are the worst patients and doctors are also the worst, have the very little understanding of lifestyle, because we're not taught it. It's not that we try to be mean or we try to be ridiculous and not understand it. It's just we're not taught it. And so went back into academics. I went to the University of Florida because I wanted to teach people in the future generations of doctors how to be better at being doctors. I wrote a book to honor my kid, and I shifted my entire life towards nutrition and lifestyle. Okay, so that's the intro about me. That was the long version, but I want to kind of go through why a person gets sick and why did I get sick? Well, it actually has to do with this concept of inflammation. And what people don't realize is inflammation is what is actually the name of our book, which is Body on Fire. It's when your body is on fire. It's mad at you, and it's mad at you because of something you're doing to it. And when you have an imbalance in your body, or your body's mad at you because you put too much demand on it, then you will trigger inflammation. So arguably all illnesses are bound by that central core beam of inflammation, because you may be genetically predisposed to any illness. You might be predisposed to diabetes or heart disease or rheumatoid arthritis like myself. But what triggers that illness to all of a sudden become an illness, right? And so that central beam of all of these illnesses, inflammation, and whatever your genetic predisposition is will maybe impact how your genes express. Some people talk about the concept of epigenomics or epigenetics, which is sort of that concept of the milieu or that surrounds a gene is what often is the trigger for that disease. So this is the traditional thought. Typically, we think of illness, and I've learned this since medical school. We have this thing, we have genetic predisposition, and then we have this thing we call the second hit. And the second hit is often an unknown trigger or lifestyle trigger, like what triggered that cancer, what triggered that inflammation, that, oh, pregnancy was, or people told me my pregnancy, the hormonal changes is what triggered my rheumatoid arthritis. Possibly and probably, but was that the only component? And so all of these things triggered inflammation in the body, which then ultimately triggered illness. And as doctors, we're taught to treat the inflammation and treat the illness. But what if you looked at it differently and you said, well, gosh, okay, I have a genetic predisposition to X illness. For me, it's rheumatoid arthritis. And there was something in my lifestyle that triggered or activated my gene or activated gene expression, which triggered inflammation, which triggered illness. Well, then what if you started further back and you started at lifestyle and you actually treated the lifestyle and inflammation? Maybe you never get the illness. So a lot of those lifestyle factors are important to consider. So what are those? And this is from our book, and I like this in particular because it's a scale, and it reminds us that there's so many stresses in our body, but there's so many resources as well. And what are those things that are stressors? Well, gosh, in 2023 in America, the stressors are abundant. What are they? Well, people are not sleeping enough. You should be sleeping 7 to 9 hours per night. Most adults are not sleeping 7 to 9 hours. They sleep because they have trouble snoring, and they wake up with frequent urination as we age, more pain, etc. And these things often are triggers for poor sleep. There's also mental stress. There's a high level stress at our jobs, our work, our commitments to our families, our own medical illnesses that create our social media exposure. All of these things become significant stressors and mental stress. There's also water pollutants. There's processed foods, sedentary lifestyle, environmental toxins. All of these are stressors on our body, and we'll go through some of those in some detail. And so all of these things are pushing us into this state of demand. All these things are demanding of us, and we just continue to kind of go. But unlike our phone, when our phone hits 5%, we panic and we run to a charger because we got to charge our phone. We've forgotten how to charge ourselves or recharge ourselves. So what are those resources we have in our body, or in our life? We've forgotten about those resources. Well, we have movement and exercise. We have yoga, and we have clean water. We have meditation. We have restorative sleep, and we have plant-based nutrition. All of these things are resources to improving our health. And you might say, many of us are skeptics in the room, including myself, like, how am I supposed to exercise when I feel lousy? Or what am I supposed to do when I'm 65 years old and have eaten the same way for 65 years? Like, how am I going to start eating more plants? Really? And so it's not, I have been in practice for 15 years. I have worked with veterans. I have worked with inner city. I have worked every single place, you name it. I have worked rural America, and I have heard every story. And what I would say is that everybody has the ability to change, everybody. And so it's just about willing to sort of take that leap of faith, which is something I myself had to do. So why did I get rheumatoid arthritis? Well, I got rheumatoid arthritis because I had the genes, I got inflammation, and then I developed illness. Genes were always there. Poor lifestyle caused the inflammation, activated gene expression, and triggered illness. So I believe that my lifestyle triggers were lack of sleep, stress, and having too much dairy and processed foods. So much of our chronic illness is identifying your triggers and figuring out how to calm your inflammation. So we'll start with a little bit on nutrition, because that's important in one of my areas of interest and focus. And because what we eat all triggers inflammation, and that's through the gut. And so I want you to kind of think about the gut, and everybody's like, why do I have to think about my gut? And why is a cardiologist talking to me about too? Well, the truth is we all need to be thinking about our bowels. And so when I talk to my patients, and as a cardiologist, I ask my patients, how are your bowels? And people are like, oh, well, my whole life, I've only gone to the bathroom every 2 days, 3 days. I'm often constipated. Those are sure signs to me that your gut's unhappy. That is not normal. That is never normal. And so if you're not having regular bowel movements, then that's, for me, it's a flag. So what we're looking for is really healthy bowel movements. But why is that? Like, what makes a healthy bowel movement? Well, a healthy bowel movement comes from a healthy gut. And how do you get a healthy gut? And why do I care so much about the gut? So what people don't realize is that the gut actually has a load of bacteria in it. And all those bacteria, or let's call them gut bugs, all those gut bugs have their own DNA. and their own genes and their own ability to affect how you feel. So if you have an unhappy gut, you're going to have an unhappy body. So it's very important to understand that if your gut is unhappy, your body will be unhappy. And you have to fix your gut in order to fix your body. If you want to fix your mind, your gut has to be happy. They're all connected. So the mind, the cliche word mind-body connection is absolutely real. And so we have to understand how they're all connected. And so the things that I always remind people about is that we want a healthy gut, and we want a lot of what I call microbial diversity. All that means is we want a whole lot of different bugs. We want lots of different bugs in our gut. And the way you get those is by avoiding foods that are low in fiber, which means the opposite, which we need to eat lots and lots of fiber. We want to avoid processed foods, and that means we want to eat more complex and complex high fiber foods and avoid those processed foods. So all of those things like highly processed foods and low fiber will decrease your gut diversity, and that's a problem. And people will say, well, if I eat fiber like beans or apples, I get gas. And so that's true. You will get gas. Partly, some of it is a good thing, but some of it is because your gut is so unused to getting fiber that it kind of is like, whoa. So you get that initially, your body will feel bloated and gassy. And I always tell my patients, just lean in. For a couple of weeks, just make a lot of jokes about being gassy and farting a lot, because it's funny. It is funny. It's funny and ridiculous, but you have to go through it in order to heal your body. So we want you to get microbial diversity, and that's going to come with eating high fiber and low processed foods. We want to increase your short chain fatty acids in your gut. That's things that make the gas, and you want to do that because those things are anti-inflammatory, against inflammation. We want to reduce different metabolites in your gut, which I've written out here and we may go through. And you want to avoid getting a leaky gut, which comes from basically keeping your gut strong. And just based on time, I might just go through some of the topics and not all of them. So how do you get better microbial diversity to decrease inflammation? Well, you have to eat high fiber, remove processed low fiber foods, and increase fermented foods. So what are fermented foods? Well, fermented foods are foods that are natural probiotics. So that means they already have the bugs in them. The healthy bugs that we want are in those natural probiotics. And now I want you to kind of be mulling over, because you're probably like, well, what the heck is a natural probiotic? Because I want you to kind of think about that. And I'm going to tell you the answer in 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. So natural probiotics are things like kimchi and sauerkraut. And those are very natural sources of fermented foods where you're getting a lot of those bugs. And so they help restore your gut faster than just adding in fiber. And so this is a slide that I don't want you to kind of get bogged down in. I really just want to show you that a study was done in Stanford, and what they looked at was high fiber and fermented foods. And what they found was that you really needed to eat a lot of fermented foods. You also need to eat a lot of fiber, but if your gut has not been used to fiber, you will actually do better eating fermented foods, kind of adding in those healthy gut bugs, and then gradually introducing fiber. So I also want to show you this because, again, I don't want to bog you down with studies because it's not important, but this is kind of a fun one and I like it. So let's remember that I told you that we want more short chain fatty acids because those are anti-inflammatory. And these 3 words, acetic acid, propionic acid, and butyric acid, are all short chain fatty acids. So there was a study that was done between a native African community, so people who ate a plant-based diet that was high in fiber with just a little bit of meat, versus an African American diet, which was a diet that was highly processed and low in fiber. And then they looked at the amount of the short chain fatty acids. And what they found was, if you look at AA, which is the Black, and NA, which is the native African, you can see that the native Africans have way more short chain fatty acids than the African American. So my scientific colleagues might look at me and say, well, so what, Monica? This is genetically different. African Americans and native Africans are totally different. Hundreds of years have passed. They're different people. So what they did was they actually looked at their diets and then they switched them. They gave the African Americans the native African diet, and then they gave the native Africans the African American diet. And what happened? Within 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Yes, 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, the short chain fatty acids in the African Americans went up because they were eating the native African diet. And within 2 weeks, the native Africans reduced their short chain fatty acids. So if you think about that, you have the ability to change your gut in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. There's also a bug or metabolite, in our body called TMAO. And I don't want you to get bogged down by this word TMAO because it's irrelevant. You know, we doctors like to use big words that mean nothing. And even to me, my whole family kind of jokes about the word TMAO because used to see my son when he was 9, he'd walk around going, oh, let's look at the TMAO and this and the TMAO and that. But TMAO is a metabolite that your gut makes. So if you eat foods that are high in phosphatidylcholine, like cheese, meat, and eggs, and you put them in your gut, your body will make something called trimethylamine N oxide, which is TMAO. And TMAO has been shown to trigger inflammation in your body. So when you eat foods that are high in phosphatidylcholine like that, you're going to trigger inflammation. You actually can worsen your cholesterol and increase plaque in your arterial walls. And when they did this study, they looked at the rates, and this was heart-related events, but I would love them to look at inflammation in itself in this study. What they looked at, they said myocardial infarction, stroke, or death on the y-axis, and x-axis is years. And the more TMAO you had in your body, the higher rates of events you had. So let's say that again. If you eat more red meat, cheese, eggs, you will develop higher amounts of transmethylamine N oxide. And we know that trimethylamine, TMAO, higher amounts is associated with higher rates of heart attack, stroke, or death. So I think what you should take away from that is that what we know is that people have more inflammation when they have higher amounts of TMAO. So this is the last concept of the gut, that I want to talk about, which is intestinal permeability, or the leaky gut. And this is another picture from my book, actually. And this is the colon. So this is the colon where the poo goes through. So remember, when you eat food, and eventually the bad remnants go out and you poop them out. That's the point of the body. But this circle, if I opened it up, it looks like this with all these little fingers on it. So I was talking about the little fingers. And this is your army. So your gut has this army. It has a cavalry. It has fences built, barricades. It has soldiers on horses, which are the first responders, and it has the Navy SEALs. And all of these levels of infantry or military are ready to attack anything that comes into your bloodstream from your gut. But what happens to some people is that those junctions, so those barricades, they break. And those junctions break, and things that shouldn't get through the barricade get through the barricade, and they trigger inflammation in your body. But it's okay. You have the Navy SEALs and the infantry. I mean, so many people to fight the inflammation. But what happens is if you keep insulting with some kind of toxin to your gut, you're eventually going to fail, right? There's going to be eventually all your Navy SEALs, the resources run out, and there's so much inflammation that your body moves it to other places in the body, and you get inflammation in your joints, inflammation in your heart, inflammation in your gut. And a perfect example of this is something called celiac disease. And celiac disease is allergy to wheat. And when you have an allergy to wheat, what happens is, and you have celiac disease, those patients, they break their barricades every time they eat wheat, and they trigger inflammation. If they keep eating wheat, they get so much inflammation that the whole body gets sick, right? They get rashes, they get headaches, they can have seizures, they get joint aches. And so imagine that all illnesses are like that if you break the junctions based on your illness, you'll trigger inflammation. So then you can say, okay, Monica, I get it. I got to fix my gut. How do I do that? Well, how do I make it better? Well, you change your diet, which changes your gut flora, which then decreases your inflammation and hopefully makes your illness go away. Well, what's wrong with our diet? I eat fine. What's wrong? Everybody says that to me. I eat okay. The truth is that health in America is at an all-time low. And if you look at what is the number one cause of morbidity and mortality, so like why we die and why we get illness, the number one thing, I don't know if you can read that there, it says dietary risks, dietary risks. So what is it? So what's wrong with our standard American diet or our SAD diet? Well, it's high in red meat and refined grains, processed foods, desserts, non-nutritious calories, and high sugar drinks. So only less than 1% of our adolescents, so our teenagers, and 2 to 3% of our adults are actually getting the recommended amount of fruit and vegetables. 75% of our processed foods now have added sugar, and most of them are coming from sugar sweetened beverages. If you look at your juice drinks, they're so high in amounts of sugar and processing. Even your naked drink has 60 grams of sugar. Now we know that if you eat a Southern diet, that you're actually increase your risk of stroke, you increase your risk of heart disease. Those are the things we're looking at. But what if we looked at this same study? I bet we would find that the inflammatory markers of patients eating the Southern diet are through the roof. And we do know people that eat more of a low fiber, high fat diet have more inflammatory disease like rheumatoid arthritis. It's not just the average meal is low in quality, it's huge. You know, the size of our meals have gone from sodas being 7 ounces to 42 ounces. So people always say to me, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I just eat it once in a while. But really, I truthfully don't care if you eat it really once in a while. The problem is that most people don't eat it once in a while. And they eat these foods over time, a little bit more into every day, and becomes a slippery slope. And what happens is now 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. Our child no longer looks like the child on the left, but they look like the child on the right. So what am I telling you? Like, what is the deal? I got to change my gut. I got to change my nutrition. Like, how do I do all this? And does it actually do anything? And this is a heart disease study. And the reason I show it to you is because heart disease and autoimmune disease are very similar to me in the sense that there's a lot of inflammation and a lot of it is reversible. So even though we don't have a study on the rheumatoid patient, I just want you to see this genetic predisposition here. So what you can see here is that blue is a favorable lifestyle and red is an unfavorable lifestyle. And then you can see low, medium, or high genetic risk. So you can look at a person like me that has high genetic risk. So if I have high genetic risk and then I keep an unfavorable lifestyle, I have double the risk of getting plaque in my heart than somebody with a good lifestyle. So similarly, if I have an unfavorable lifestyle, I'm going to have loads and loads more inflammation. And that's been shown that if we actually change somebody's diet to improve it and eat it more plant-friendly, high fiber, you're going to decrease inflammation. Similarly, if you're low genetic risk, and some people are like, my mother lived till 105, I'm going to be fine. But is that really true? And this just shows that if you have a favorable lifestyle, you're going to do great. But you can actually double your risk by having an unfavorable lifestyle. So does what you eat matter? Absolutely. So we really want people to eat mostly plant-based, Mediterranean plant-based, vegetarian plant-based, DASH. These are all names for plant-based diets that what we want you to avoid sugar, avoid energy drinks, cut out, eat lots and lots of beans, and really focus on more high fiber. So when I work with patients, I make this little chart for them. And I tell them, because a lot of patients say, well, I can't get rid of my this, I've eaten this for so long. And so we just work slowly. I like to meet people where they are. You don't have to be perfect every single day. You just try to get better every day. And the things that I focus on are really cutting out your red meat, which you really should cut out red meat. There's really no point in red meat. And really focus on chicken and fish. Try to cut out all your processed foods, cut out your saturated fats, and eat loads and loads of fiber. And that fiber comes from fruits and vegetables. It comes from nuts and seeds, beans and legumes, complex breads, tofu, and then add those fermented foods like that kimchi and that sauerkraut. I also like to remind you that there are a lot of plant foods that aren't healthy, right? There's also Coca-Cola and French fries, and these things often are considered healthy or plant foods, but they're not healthy. So we really want to keep you focused on the foods on the left and not on the right. So why don't your doctors tell you this? Well, this is a study we did, or that I did, and it showed that we just don't have any education. So This is a matter, we've interviewed a whole bunch of docs, and it found that 1% of doctors said that they received a high level of nutrition education that gave them skills to counsel patients. And what's 0%? Well, that's the fellows in training. So those are the people we're training. They're actually getting 0% education. So things have improved slowly. I'd like to believe I'm part of that change with nutrition education, but there's still much room to improve. What about movement and exercise? And so what a lot of people don't realize that exercise is very important in autoimmune disease. Why? Well, it strengthens your muscles. Remember, your joints are little pieces that kind of help you do things, right? But around them, there's muscles, right? There's muscles around this joint. There's muscles around my joints. And if I strengthen my muscles, there actually is less impact on my joints. And people often forget that. So even with osteoarthritis, which is a different arthritis because it's not autoimmune and it's more mechanical, so you lose the cartilage between your joints, and that's osteoarthritis. But if often people have problems with their knees, if you fix the muscle here and the muscle here, then the joint has less pressure on it. So it's very important to strengthen the muscles around your joint. So it also will help maintain your bone strength. So when you walk, that motion of hitting the foot to the floor will actually help you and improve your bone growth and prevents osteoporosis. It helps you increase energy. It will help you sleep better, help you control your weight, improve your balance, and helps your mood. If you feel movement, if you do movement, you will feel better. It will help one that I probably should have put on here, which is it improves your range of motion. So you'll be able to do more and more based on if you do that exercise. So bones need strong muscles for support. So if you don't exercise, it weakens those muscles, and then more stress is on your joint. So when should you exercise? What kind should you exercise? Well, I always tell people, if you have active inflammation, be kind to your body. Be kind to your body if you're inflamed, because if you activate and use those same joints that are already inflamed, you're just going to make it worse. So allow those parts to heal, but then don't mean, oh, that means I'm out for 6 weeks. You just have to use different exercises. So we want to focus on range of motion exercises. So I often tell my patients that I really want you to focus on back muscles, strengthening up your back, because so much of us are anteriorly focused, and we really want to push you back. We want to work on your cardiovascular fitness, because most patients with autoimmune disease and rheumatoid arthritis actually die of heart disease, not often due to their rheumatoid arthritis. And we really want to focus on cardiovascular fitness. The exercises to consider, I often tell people, focus on low impact to start. And low impact stuff is yoga. You can do chair yoga. I really like swimming. And if you don't know how to swim, I have 100 patients that tell me, I don't want to wear a swimsuit. Can't make me wear a swimsuit. I'm not going to wear a swimsuit. I don't want to be cold. I've heard everything. But if I can get you to even walk in that pool or do a water aerobics or a jog in the pool, it will change your life. I've had patients come to me and say, you know what? 9 months, Dr. Aggarwal, 9 months you've been telling me to go in that pool, and damn it, I finally did it. And they finally go it, and they're like, you know what? And then they stop talking. One lady came and stopped talking, just gave me a hug. She's like, you didn't give up on me, and you changed my life. So I just want to remind you that swimming is there. But if you really still have an aversion to it, there's chair yoga, there's movement I do a lot of exercises with my patients in clinic. Things that you can do to build up the muscles around the joints is extremely important. Also, but a lot of stretching, getting on the floor or on a bed or something firm, working with a trainer. I know it's hard to pay for personal trainers because we're not very good at self-care, but learning to do the same, do the right muscles and focus on the muscles around your joints can be life altering. And I do encourage you not to over push a joint that is inflamed. If you're in a flare, please take it easy. Allow yourself to nurture in other ways and restore in other ways. We also know that if you exercise, you improve your gut. Holy moly. So wait, the whole gut will actually get better with the way I eat, but also how I exercise. Absolutely. So if you change the way you exercise and you actually move on a steady day, you actually improve that gut diversity, which is what we're looking for. It actually has been shown to increase those short chain fatty acids. Remember, those are anti-inflammatory. and then therefore they decrease inflammation. So actually exercise will help you with decreasing that inflammation. So I want to remind you that there are many things in our toolkit that we can do to heal our body, and it won't come down to just one thing. It always is multiple different things you have to do to heal, and you have to focus on your sleep. You can use these apps now to help you with your sleep, to say, remind you to go to bed, and really try to work on good sleep hygiene by listening to a meditation or to music before bed, not looking at social media before you go to sleep. That'll activate your mind or just keep you going on those reels and things like that. Really want to focus on sleep. You really do want to sleep 6 to 8 hours. And I'm using the Fitbit. I have a Fitbit on my hand and I use the Fitbit app. And lately I've been like, just surprised to see that I think I sleep really well. I love to sleep, but lately I've been sleeping 6 hours, 5.5. I'm like, oh gosh, so these are good things to remind you to reset and focus on sleep. But it's also mental stress and working on calming your mind. I often recommend journaling, really working on your nutrition, trying to focus on high fiber, low in processed foods, less meat, especially that red meat, and more plants. That's what I always tell people. Plants, I always say greens, beans, nuts, and seeds. So greens, beans, nuts, and seeds. And also working on moving. You got to start learning to move. Even when I was at my worst, I still moved. Even when you got to find ways, because it keeps your spirit up. It keeps your mood up. It makes you remember that you can do things, and remember that all those things will also improve your gut diversity, which will then decrease inflammation. So this is an exciting time. Remember that have hope that change is possible. Understand that there's a real connection between the food that we eat, what happens in our gut, and inflammation and eventually chronic illness. Movement and exercise are foundational in healing because you need to build strength. You have to remain flexible, and it'll keep your heart healthy. Focus on sleep and stress reduction, and remember, focus on balance. Just like our phone needs charging, so do we. But be empowered to know that you can do this and you can be part of the change. You don't have to change everything today. You just have to do a little bit more every day. So on the personal side, if you have any questions about inflammation, please feel free to look at my book. That is not a sell. Please look at the library. A lot of the libraries have the book, and I encourage people to get it because it really does give a step-by-step. And then there's the cookbook that just came out last year. I do run a prevention-based practice at the University of Florida. And I've also actually become the medical director of a farm because I'm really focused on, again, improving food access, healthy food access and movement, stress reduction in a lifestyle-based clinic. So bottom line, eat more plants, try to move every day, do the best you can, and every day a little bit better, and support your local farmers who can be part of the change. This is a heart disease comic, but it's so funny and it's so perfect, and just like all inflammation and inflammatory diseases, I just love it. So it says, so you have two choices. We can perform triple bypass surgery where we take a vein out of your thigh, open up your chest so we can sew the vein onto your coronary artery. This costs more than $100,000 and will keep you laid up for at least 2 months. Or we could put you on a vegan or a plant-based diet. A plant-based diet, gee doc, that sounds pretty extreme. So again, I know that lifestyle changes seem really hard, but if you do a little bit every day, the world is your oyster. You have a lot of power to change your future. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Aggarwal. Wow, that was great. So informational and funny. Like some of the things that you said kind of made me giggle because I've been saying to my mother for years. My she'll be 82, and she has some tummy troubles. So we're trying to work on her gut, and she continually says in her very English accent, well, Denise, you cannot just stop eating foods that you've been eating your entire life, just like. And my response, and I've gotten better at this, is, well, you can, Mom, if they're upsetting your stomach. And, I know it's not an easy thing for sure, but I do think it's important for people to realize that there are, slowly, and you said, you can make changes in 2 weeks to your gut. So I'd like to open to everyone, to the group. I'm going to try to figure out what I'm doing here. To the group to see if anyone has any questions.
It's a lot of pressure when the people are sort of like, oh my gosh.
Let's see. Okay, lots of thank yous. If nobody else has questions, I have questions. I always have questions.
Why don't you shoot out a few, make people kind of more inspired and comfortable.
Okay, so you had a lot of great information in here, and I was taking notes. But one of the things that I thought I was unclear on, or and everyone may be unclear on, what exactly are examples of short chain fatty acids?
Sure. So short chain fatty acids are things that you can't get from your diet. Like you can't eat a short chain fatty acid. You eat a food that activates the production of short chain fatty acids. And those foods are the high fiber, low in processed foods. And then people often ask me, well, what are high fiber foods? And that's important to know. So high fiber foods are things some people are like, well, just need to eat an apple every day. Well, yes and no. I mean, it's more than it's all your greens, your leafy green vegetables, but the dark greens are better than the light greens. So like iceberg lettuce, I always tell people that's like a pretend lettuce. You know, it's like not really a lettuce. It's a, romaine is a little bit better, but kale, spinach, chard, arugula, those are much more potent choices for fiber. Well, what else? Well, beans, people forget the impact of beans. And again, everybody always talks about beans being the musical fruit, because they're cause and trigger gas. But remember, it's that over time you develop a stronger gut and that gas goes away. You almost have to remind yourself is that you have to kind of go through the gassy experience to strengthen your gut. So often I tell people, you're going to hate me for about 2.5 weeks. And then you get it. And then you're like, oh, okay, got it. I get it.
I love it. Thank you for clarifying. One of the things, so we talked about fermented foods. We also talked about dairy being an inflammatory. So people will say, oh, I eat lots of yogurt. It's got lots of probiotics. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so yogurt of all of the dairy products is probably the safest one because in terms of the negatives and positives, like the negative of dairy and the positive of the natural probiotic, you're probably balancing yourself out. And in most of the studies, if you isolate dairy and you isolate out yogurt, that was the most beneficial one. So I think if you want to keep any dairy at all, I would just keep yogurt. But I would get rid of all your cheese and your milk for sure. And there are also loads of yogurts out there now that are non-dairy. So, look at those and see if you can play with those. And maybe you'll find that you don't miss the cow's milk dairy as much as you think. But of all the things I'm going to tell people, I'm going to tell them, if you're going to keep dairy, just keep the yogurt. But watch the yogurt too, because so many of these yogurts have fruit on the bottom or they have the little pouch and you put the fruit in but that is loaded in sugar half the time. And, those things are not good for you. So really try to eat unadulterated, low fat or no fat cow's milk yogurt or something like that. I think a low fat is fine. Or maybe a no fat, depends on your obesity status. If you're going to have it, and then add your own fruit.
Correct. I'm with you. So I have a question from May. She asked, does your body give you some signals when you eat the wrong foods?
Yeah, it's a good question. Some people, yes and no. I mean, there's definitely, some people are more in tune to their body. Like I'm super in tune to my body now. And so if I eat something, I know that I've done bad. And it's not that I'm perfect. So I always remind people that just because I'm the one behind giving the talk, I have moments where I also break down. But the key is that 95% of the time you have to be good, right? So that's one of the things to think about. But your body will give you signals, but unfortunately, a lot of times it's over time. And so you often, some people what I often tell people to do is food journal and activity journal. And how was my stress that day? How was my nutrition that day? How did I sleep that day? And how was my pain? And when you do focus on those things, you can actually start isolating what are your triggers. Often people are like, well, I have no idea what I did. But when they start doing that journaling, they're able to be more in tune to what it is that's triggering inflammation for them.
Got very good. Thank you. I know. I have the same issue at this point. Like I know when I've eaten something that I shouldn't have eaten because an hour later my stomach's kind of giving me some trouble. Whereas, years ago, before I followed a more plant-based diet, I may not have noticed that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important piece too, is the journaling is really important because it does help you to notice things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's see. I have one other question here in the chat regarding omega-3 and 6s, which we didn't really talk about, but obviously in the specifically, but how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And usually I do talk about it, so sorry about that. So omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are interesting. Most of the foods we eat in America are omega-6. So like your salad dressings and a lot of our oils that we eat are high in omega-6. And omega-6 is considered to be pro-inflammatory and pro-clotting. I mean, that's a good thing in some ways, because you want to, if you get an infection or when you get a cut, you need to heal it, right? So you need some level of inflammation, you need some level of healing. So the problem is most of us are flip-flopped and we have so much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, which is the anti-inflammatory. And so I often tell people really cutting out those sort of artificial salad dressings and those highly processed foods, which have those high omega-6, you're going to really improve, you'll reduce that. And then adding in omega-3 fatty acids. Well, how does that come from? It comes from things like chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, almonds. Those things are going to be sort of your high omega-3. Eggs have them, but eggs have other issues. So those are some of the things I often tell people. Often people will then next ask me whether they should take a supplement of omega-3. And I don't know the answer to that because we don't know. Most of the data is up and down. Some things are supportive and some things are against. And so I often tell people try to get, if you try to assess your own responsiveness to it. But if you can get it through your food, that's money.
Gotcha.
Everything you can get through your food is better.
Yes, I agree. I have one last question from the chat, and then I think we'll have to wrap up. Oops, and I just lost the question. There it is. How soon do you think people with arthritis can sense an improvement if they move to a more whole food plant-based nutrition?
I will tell you within 6 weeks, I see changes in my patients and myself. It was about 6 weeks. And within 6 weeks, I was different.
I wrote that down. It was amazing. One comment you commented, you said this earlier, as doctors, we're not so good because, we know a lot, or we think we know a lot. You know so much. I mean, your training and your experience in your life, your life experiences. And I think that is truly what I was really excited to hear your talk, because I understand the training that you've been through. My husband's a doctor, so I get that. But then to take that life, that situation and really bring this other piece, this nutrition piece, is amazing. And it's so what we need in our world today. So I want to thank you personally for taking that journey and sharing it with us.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to communities and trying to get better. Remember, just try to get better every day and you will. Believe you can and you will.
I love it. So before we go, I just want to quickly share with you our presenter. Hold on, I'm not sharing my screen right.
Yeah.
There we go. Slideshow. That's everybody. We're going to start. I'm much better when somebody else is doing the slides, I think. Let's see. So I'm going to go to the right one here. I know I'm showing this kind of odd. Here we go. So
I'm going to sign off, but thank you again.
Oh, yes, doctor. Thank you so much. Dr. Monica Aggarwal. Thank you. Everyone unmute, say goodbye. Thank you. Anything?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe trip. Okay, so for everyone, thank you for being here. I hope you found this information today not just interesting and useful, but I hope you take it to that next level and do something, change your lifestyle. Everything takes takes a little bit of time, and one thing at a time is really what what we're talking about here. It's like, we know that we can't change our whole diet. Oops, there we go. Our whole diet, right, in one full swoop, but we can make changes, little by little. And that's what I'm hoping that this presentation allowed you to or gave to you. So next week, which will be on June the 7th, I'm just going to double check my date. Yep, Wednesday, June 7th, again, 12 p.m. Central Time. We're going to be talking with Dr. Stephen Esser. He is a physician medical in medicine and rehabilitation down in Ponte Vedra, Florida, which is actually where one of the other Mayo Clinic locations is. So he will be here, and he is going to be talking essentially about nutrition and orthopedic health. So kind of like that next step when it comes to arthritis and joints, and really the key here is to get us moving, to manage arthritis, joint pain, and to keep us moving and enjoying a really high positive quality of life from today forward. So thoughts, comments, questions for me before we sign off?
No, thank you. It was very good.
Thanks, Mary. All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you here again next week, 12 p.m. Central Time for Dr. Esser. Have a great week, everyone. And let's today for lunch, whatever time you are, dinner, let's add in some green leafy vegetables and some additional plant-based foods.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, May.